Snow falls thick and heavy, blanketing the earth in silence. It clings to the thatched roof of the longhouse, gathers on the bare branches beyond the pasture, and softens the sound of hoofbeats somewhere in the dark. The world is hushed, caught in the quiet breath between night and morning. Inside, the air is warmer but still dim. The central fire pit has burned low, a bed of red embers tucked beneath a crust of ash. But it only takes a breath, just one careful stirring from practiced hands, and the light returns. Astrid wakes with the quiet discipline of someone long used to cold mornings. Her first steps are not toward grooming, but to the central fire pit, where she kneels, stirs the embers, and coaxes the fire back to life. Only once the flames are licking gently at the kindling does she rise again and begin her morning wash. She smooths her hands with snow from a basin just outside the door, rubs them briskly, and pats her face dry with a cloth. Her hair is quickly re-braided, not for vanity, but for function. A tidy braid stays clear of wool and fire. Then, and only then, does the day begin. Astrid does not sigh or stretch or linger. She moves with purpose even before the sun. Her hands are worn from years of honest work, calloused where the loom bites and the churn resists, but well cared for as any wise woman's would be. The children still sleep along the raised platforms near the central fire pit, curled under pelts. She lets them rest a little longer. She always does. She remembers what it feels like to grow up in a place where warmth is earned each day, and she means to teach them how to keep it. Bread must be tended. Porridge must be watched. Herbs from the hanging bundles must be ground while the house is quiet. These are not just chores, they are foundations. And Astrid does not merely manage a home. She rules these walls with a wise and steady hand. The air smells of yeast and smoke and the faint sharpness of drying herbs. It is not unpleasant. It smells like survival, like planning, like 1,000 decisions made before dawn. Astrid works quickly, not hurried. The bread dough is shaped and set near the central fire pit to rise again. The porridge simmers without sticking because she knows how long it can be left before it burns. She lifts a wooden lid to check the curds forming in yesterday's milk, tests the texture with 2 fingers, nods once, and covers it again. The goat will need warm water soon. The one that limps still favors its left side. If it doesn't improve, she has dried yarrow steeped and ready. She knows every animal's sound, every barrel's weight, every creak in the walls that isn't where it should be. Her morning may seem quiet, but it pulses with need, and soon the dam will break. Winter, for some, is a time of rest, but not for Astrid. This is the season of maintenance, of preservation, of watching and adjusting. There is no harvest, no dyeing of wool in open kettles, no visits to market stalls, but there is wood to be split, clothes to be mended, tools to be sharpened, jars to be rotated, and smoked meat to be checked. She inspects the smoked meat for mold, ice bloom, or the soft give of a failed cure. This is the season where careful women keep whole families alive, and Astrid is careful down to the last scoop of grain and the last curl of wax that seals the mead barrels in the root cellar. She counts everything, not out of fear but out of respect. The land sleeps. The animals breathe steam into the cold. Her children dream beneath fur blankets. But she is awake, measuring what they will need to see the spring. The house begins to stir. One of the older boys rises first. slipping out from under his blanket to feed the coals without needing to be told. A cousin mutters something about frozen boots and earns a quiet laugh from another mat near the wall. Ingrid, Astrid's eldest daughter, is among the next to wake. At 12, she's nearly a woman in the eyes of the village, already helping with chores and watching the little ones. She sits up, brushing hair from her face, and looks to the bundle of blankets beside her. "Eric," she whispers, nudging gently. Her younger brother, only 7, doesn't stir. She frowns and tries again, a little firmer. "Come on, you'll miss breakfast." Still nothing. Now Ingrid's voice lifts, just enough to carry. "Mama!" Astrid sets down the wooden bowl in her hand and crosses the longhouse quickly. She kneels, places her palm against Eric's forehead, and frowns. His skin is hot, too hot, and his breath is shallow. She shoos the others away, pulling the blanket higher around him and tucking it beneath his chin. "Let him rest," she says, voice calm but clipped. He's caught something. Already her mind turns, not to panic, but to preparation. Fever in winter is no small thing, especially for one so young. By now, the hearth blazes bright, and the scent of barley porridge seeps into the timber walls. Behind her, the rustle of movement begins, and furs are tossed back. Sleepy feet patter across creaking planks. The day has broken. Astrid doesn't call them. She doesn't need to. The children who live under this roof know the rhythm by heart. One of the older girls, her niece perhaps, moves beside her without a word. Together, they ladle the porridge into bowls. The child copies Astrid's gestures, careful to turn the wooden spoon just so, to scrape just enough from the pot without scorching the bottom. "Good," Astrid murmurs. "Always stir from the side. The fire talks through the edges." Another girl drags a stool near the hanging herbs and reaches for the pestle. Astrid watches her begin to grind dried meadowsweet, cheeks flushed with focus. A boy, perhaps 7, carries a clay jug outside to gather water. His boots crunch through frost, breath rising in little bursts like the steam from the pot. Astrid watches through the doorway, not calling out. Let him try. Let him spill. He'll learn. In the Viking world, children are not hidden from work. They are woven into it. By the time they are 10, most know how to salt meat, patch wool, chase chickens, and haggle at market. Survival isn't a task for adults alone. It's a family craft. And Astrid is both teacher and example. Each movement a lesson. Each correction gentle but firm. Later, by the fire, Astrid spins wool between her fingers, drawing thread from fleece with a practiced rhythm. Her daughter, Ingrid, spins beside her with growing confidence. Her thread uneven, but improving. Not too tight, Astrid murmurs, eyes never leaving her work. Wool needs to breathe, like lungs, like bread. It is not a lesson, it is a ritual, a skill passed down. One fiber at a time. She again glances toward the furs where Eric sleeps, unmoving, sweat beading along his brow. She rises and crosses to him, presses her palm to his chest. Still burning, she murmurs and motions to another woman, her cousin who is nearby. Fetch snow and the willow bark, second shelf from the left. The longhouse quiets a little. Bjorn's brother Marcus looks over with concern, but says nothing. Astrid doesn't ask for help, she doesn't need to. Her husband has been watching from across the room, seated beside one of the older boys, fletching arrows by firelight. When her gaze meets his, he stills, just for a moment, jaw tightening. No words are spoken, but concern passes between them like a breath held too long. By midday, the longhouse is subdued. The younger children still play, but they are quieter now, looking over toward their cousin buried beneath the furs. They don't know what's wrong, but they know something is. Eric stirs beneath the pelts, moaning softly, and Astrid is there in moments. She adjusts his coverings and replaces the snow-packed cloth on his brow. His breath is shallow, and his skin, still flushed with fever, shines with sweat. She offers him another sip of the willow bark infusion, gently coaxing him to drink even though he doesn't want to. Ingrid kneels close, one sleeve already damp. She does not ask if he'll be all right. She simply stays, cooling his forehead again and again. Astrid moves through the rest of the house with effort now. Her hands still churn butter, still grind herbs, still directs labors in her domain. But her rhythm is off. Twice she forgets what she is doing, standing in place before the spindle or the pot, as if waiting for her thoughts to catch up. From across the room, Bjorn watches without speaking. His fletching knife lies still in his lap. Their eyes meet just once, and in that single moment, something passes between them. Not words, but fear, raw and real, settles in both of them, tight and unrelenting. As the afternoon grows longer, shadows begin to stretch thin across the packed dirt floor. The longhouse holds its breath, and for a moment, so does Astrid. But a breath cannot be held for long, and neither can the chores. The loom stands tall in the longhouse, closer to the fire now, pulled in from the open lean-to where it lives in the warmer months. Its frame is heavy, scarred by years of use, and hung with threads the color of river stone and moss. Astrid stands before it, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, hands already in motion while a young girl watches from the bench, eyes tracking each shuttle pass. She'll take the threads one day, but not yet. This is not pastime. It is not embroidery for decoration or idle fingers filling empty hours. This is work, valuable work, strategic work, and it demands precision. Each warp thread is weighted with stone. Each weft is passed through with rhythm learned not from books, but from bloodline. The cloth that emerges will keep a child warm. It may be traded for salt or silver. It may become a sail, if strong enough, or a shroud. In this cold season, when the land sleeps and the animals draw close to shelter, the loom becomes a battlefield of another kind. Quiet, yes, but no less powerful. It is said that the Norns, the goddesses who shape fate itself, do so with thread. Astrid does not claim that sort of power, but she understands the metaphor well. When she spins wool, she's not just making thread, she's calculating. How much wool is left in the baskets? Which dyes are low? How many tunics must be replaced before next snow? How much can be spared for trade? And how much must be hidden, held back, hoarded? A woman's eye measures worth in wool and labor, what a man may weigh in sweat and steel. Outside these walls, people may speak of warriors and weapons, of conquest and kings. But here, at this loom, in the hush of snow and smoke, another kind of strength takes form, a strength that wraps the body, a strength that earns its worth, one stitch at a time, a strength that endures. In the corner of the longhouse, just beyond the reach of the central firelight, hangs the herb rack. Bundles of dried yarrow, nettle, meadowsweet, and angelica sway gently in the shifting warmth, their scents mingling with wood smoke and wool. Some are bound tight with colored thread, others hang loose like reminders. Their names were whispered to Astrid by her mother, who learned them from hers. And in this house, those names are remembered. She keeps salves in small pots, beeswax and fat, mixed with crushed plants, labeled not with words, but with texture and smell. The one for burns, the one for fever, the one for childbirth pain that she hasn't needed herself in years, but in a house full of women, someone always does. Still, she checks it. She always does. Astrid is no seeress. No staff-bearing prophet who walks in trance or draws crowds for riddles. But that doesn't mean her home is without spirit. Normally she hums when she grinds roots, but not today. Today she is full of worry for her young son. But the work must be done. Beside her, another young girl mimics the motion, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth in fierce concentration. Astrid pretends not to notice, but shifts her hand to show the better grip. Astrid lights a small flame with each new moon. She speaks her ancestors' names as she adds herbs to broth, not out of superstition, but because names carry memory, and memory feeds more than the belly. When a child coughs too long, it is Astrid who listens to the sound. When a cousin winces at a turned ankle, it is her hand that tests the swelling. She knows how to stitch a cut, when to let a fever burn, and which bitter teas must be swallowed, despite protest. She is not feared, like the vulva. She is trusted. And when night falls, and the work is done, it is Astrid who tells the stories. Not just the great sagas of kings and gods, but the smaller ones. Family births, lost sheep. That time her daughter stood in the path of a fox and didn't flinch. These are the stories that stitch the world together. The kind that live longer than stone. Around late afternoon, Astrid slips outside beneath the snow-laden overhang where the cold bites hard and honest. Her fears for Eric have only grown throughout the day. He is so small and so hot to the touch that she begins to fear for his life. His soft mumbles and cries, his thrashing and his delirium do not bode well. If this does not break soon, if it lasts into the next day, well, she cannot bear to think it. Her breath comes in a shudder. Her hands tremble at her sides, and the tears she'd been holding in for some time begin to fall. They are silent, stubborn things that will no longer wait. She must struggle there longer than she should while fighting to rein it all back in because Bjorn walks outside, searching for and finding her. He says nothing, just wraps his arms around her shoulders and pulls her close. Leaning into him, she finally lets herself cry in earnest, her face pressed against his chest, gripping his tunic in her fists. He closes his eyes and just holds her, steadying them both, until eventually, her breath begins to steady. She pulls back, hiccuping softly as the sobs ebb. She looks up at him, regaining her composure from his strength, and wipes her face, while smoothing her skirts. She nods once to him while clearing her throat, before straightening up and stepping back inside. A whole conversation occurs without ever uttering a word. Bjorn lingers behind, staring out into the snow, before drawing one long breath, sniffling once and swallowing the weight in his throat, then turns and follows her back in. Winter brings more than snow. It brings bodies. So many more under one roof than in the warmer months. The men, once gone from sunup to sundown, are now inside more often, tending tools, repairing gear, or seeing to the animals in the nearby barn. Boys trail after them, learning as they go. A son lifts a pitchfork too big for his arms, mimicking his father's motion with clumsy pride. Another watches closely as his uncle shows him how to check a goat's hooves, crouched low and serious in the hay. And inside, Astrid sidesteps them all. Men, boys, boots, snow, and sighs as she wipes the floor for the third time that morning. A scattering of rushes, trampled with slush and bits of hay, does little to help. Winter, she mutters, not without affection, is when everyone forgets how to shut a door. The longhouse is fuller now, warmer with bodies, louder with life, but still, it is her domain. Inside, the fire burns higher now, but the warmth feels thin, unable to touch the cold that's crept into their bones. Astrid moves with quiet precision through the dimming light. Her fingers red from scrubbing roots, her eyes dry but hollow. She rinses the barley twice, then adds it to the pot already warming by the fire pit. 2 pots simmer over the fire now. One, thin and clear, meant for Eric. The other, thicker with barley, wild onion, dried turnip, and flakes of smoked fish. She doesn't waste meat on the broth, not until she knows he can keep it down. Ingrid grates dried cheese with careful hands. She hasn't spoken much since the morning. Her eyes keep flicking toward the furs. The cousins are quieter now, too. One of the girls helps with rinsing bowls. The youngest boy gathers kindling without being asked. They all feel the shift in the air. Bjorn checks the penned animals at the far end of the longhouse. The lame goat still favors its leg, but is holding weight now. He rubs its side once, murmurs something low, and returns to the fire with a small armload of kindling from the sheltered store outside. Snow dusts his shoulders. He sets the wood down by the hearth and gives Astrid a look. Not hopeful, not grim. Just a question with no answer yet. She gives a slow shake of her head, then stirs the pot again. Steam rises. The scent is thin, but comforting and familiar. It's Ingrid who ladles the broth into a small wooden cup. She kneels beside Eric, helping him lift his head just enough for a sip. He swallows once, twice, then slips back down into sleep. They exchange no words, but Astrid rests her hand briefly on her daughter's shoulder as she passes. The rest of the meal is simple: thickened porridge, bits of smoked fish flaked over the top. The table is quieter than usual with subdued conversation. No teasing, only watching and waiting. All while the fire cracks and the pot simmers on. The longhouse hums with quiet motion, its corners steeped in the gentle clatter of evening routines. The fire burns low, but steady now, its glow casting golden ribbons across packed earth and worn wool. Bowls are scrubbed with snow and wiped dry. Ash is swept from corners. The day, though heavy, yields at last to rhythm. Ingrid moves silently between tasks, her hands chapped but uncomplaining. She rinses the last of the wooden spoons and sets them upside down to dry near the hearth. Her braid hangs loose over her shoulder, strands curling in the warmth. Astrid rises from her place at the herb table, dusting juniper from her palms. Her knees ache, her back knots beneath the weight of worry. But there is one more thing to check. Always one more. She crosses to Eric's pallet and kneels beside him, her breath already caught before her fingers even reach his brow. This time, it does not burn. His skin is still warm, fevered, yes, but less so. The flush on his cheeks has dulled, and a faint dampness clings to his hairline, not the fire-slick sweat of earlier, but the gentle sheen that follows when a storm begins to pass. Astrid steals, for one heartbeat, then two. A soft sound escapes her lips, a gasp more felt than heard. She closes her eyes just for a moment, as if not daring to name what she senses. When she opens them, her gaze lifts across the room. Bjorn sits on the bench, unmoving. He has watched every step she's taken. The flicker of firelight plays across his face, and though he says nothing, his eyes ask the question he hasn't spoken all day. She gives the smallest nod, barely more than a breath. A smile begins to shape itself, tentative and trembling at the corners. And Bjorn exhales, long and slow, as if he'd been holding his lungs hostage since morning. His shoulders ease. His grip on the carved spindle in his lap loosens. The silence that has held the longhouse in its jaws begins to ease, just slightly. A child already abed stirs and mumbles something drowsy and harmless. Ingrid lets out a tired, relieved chuckle without meaning to. The goats shift in their pen, snorting soft against the straw. The night is not yet over, the danger not yet gone, but hope, fragile and flickering, has returned to the room. Later, when the fire has settled into a low, steady glow, and the coals pulse like a heart half asleep, the children curl beneath their furs one by one. No one is told to sleep tonight. They simply drift, worn thin by worry and the weight of silence. Astrid remains by Eric's side. She adjusts his blankets again, fingers brushing his brow one last time to reassure herself the fever hasn't surged back. Still warm, but not raging. Still breathing, but deeper now. Not quite steady, but steadier. She hums softly. Not a song for show, not even meant to be heard, really. Just a sound passed from mother to child in the space between waking and dream. Old words older still than memory, spoken once in her own childhood.
Zwavelbern, i vindens fang, hondir himins, mjukuklatha, hildur de prast, hjarta slayer, mothir vakith, mehtendir kvila.
Sleep, little ones, in the wind's embrace. Beneath the sky's soft cloak, the fire fades, the heart beats on. Your mother watches while you rest. Her voice barely lifts above the crackle of the hearth, but it carries. Bjorn hears it as he settles back against the timber wall. Ingrid hears it as she folds her arms beneath her cheek. Even the goats, quiet in their straw, seem to pause. And when Astrid finishes, she says nothing more. She only tucks the blanket 1 inch higher beneath her son's chin and lets herself sit just a while longer before the night can take her too. The longhouse settles. Wind brushes at the shutters, soft as breath. The snow falls on, quiet and insistent, blanketing the world beyond the timber walls. Inside, it is warm. Not the warmth of fire alone, but of bodies near, of care freely given, of a family drawn tight against the cold. Astrid does not sleep yet. She remains seated back against the post, eyes fixed on the slow rise and fall of Eric's chest. She has counted each breath for hours, but now, finally, they come easier, deeper. She closes her eyes, not to rest, just to breathe. Bjorn shifts beside her, wraps a fur around them both, and leans his head back against the timber. No words are spoken. There's no need. Around them, the longhouse exhales, as if some invisible thread, pulled taut since morning, has loosened at last. The fire snaps softly. A child turns over in sleep, and the world, so full of storms and sickness and silence, holds still for just a moment longer, until morning comes. In a world where storms do not wait and winters do not yield, it is not sword nor saga that keeps a people alive, but women like Astrid, with hands that heal and hearts that hold fast. They carry the weight of survival in silence, every day, every season, every breath. Tonight, the fire still burns, the fever may yet break. And for now, that is enough. Until next we meet, stay warm, stay safe, and remember, history was never just kings and battles. It was mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, and the quiet strength that built the world. If this glimpse into the old ways stirred your spirit, mark your approval with a like and bind your oath to the channel by subscribing. Speak your thoughts in the comments, for even the quietest voice has value in the hall. Until next we meet, may your hearth be warm, your path steady, and may your hunger for the wisdom and quiet truths of the common folk of our past never fade.